My wife thought she had hung up. The call stayed open for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I know that number because I've replayed it enough times for it to stop sounding like a memory and start sounding like evidence. At first, there was nothing. Just the low hum of her car. Maybe the faint shift of fabric. I almost ended the call myself. Then her voice came back different. Looser. Warmer. Like she had just stepped out of a room where she'd been pretending to be someone else. God. He's exhausting sometimes, she said, and then a second voice answered, Ryan. My best friend since I was 21, the man who stood next to me at my wedding, the man who sat with me in a hospital waiting room at 3 a.m. and didn't say a word because he knew I didn't want him to. He laughed. Not surprised. Not uncomfortable. Familiar. He still doesn't see it, Ryan asked. Claire let out a soft breath. Almost amused. Ethan believes whatever you hand him if you package it like loyalty. There was a pause. The kind where two people are smiling at something they think is private. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Rain was coming down hard enough that the road blurred at the edges. But I didn't slow down. I didn't move at all. I just need him to stay predictable for a few more weeks, she added. Once the transfer clears, it's done, Ryan chuckled under his breath. 6.8 million for playing house, not bad. And then, Claire said, lighter now. Almost relieved. I get to have a real life, a real family. Not this arrangement. Something inside my chest went very still. Ryan said one more thing, quieter. Like it had been sitting with him for a while. He was never going to give you that anyway. They were talking about my marriage like it was already over. Like I just hadn't been informed yet. I didn't hang up. I don't know why. Instinct. Maybe. Or something colder than that. The kind of instinct that tells you this is the moment your life splits in two and whatever comes next depends on whether you listen or look away. So, I listened. Rain hammered against the windshield. Traffic had slowed to a crawl. Red brake lights stretching out in front of me like a warning I was already inside of. Claire shifted on the other end of the call. I could hear the soft click of a car door closing. The hollow acoustics changing as she got inside. She's still checking the account every day, Ryan said. You're sure he doesn't know the timeline moved up? Claire laughed under her breath. Ethan barely questions anything that looks like structure. If it comes from his father's office, it's gospel. That landed somewhere deep. Not loud. Just precise. Ryan continued. Casual. Like they were discussing logistics for a dinner reservation, so once the trust disbursement hits the joint account I move it, Claire finished. Immediately. We already tested the transfer thresholds. Small amounts didn't trigger anything. My hands didn't shake. That's the part I remember most clearly. They stayed exactly where they were, steady on the wheel. Like my body had decided it would cooperate even if the rest of me didn't. How much have you pulled so far? Ryan asked. Just under $350, she said. Spread out over 8 months. He never noticed. $350,000. Not gone all at once. Not reckless. Systematic. Practiced, Ryan exhaled. Impressed. And he still thinks this is all what a marriage. Claire didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice had shifted again. Softer, more personal. He wants it to be, she said. That's a difference. There was a brief silence. Then Ryan spoke again. Quieter this time. And the baby? My chest tightened before I could stop it. Claire didn't hesitate. This baby doesn't grow up confused, she said. I'm not doing that again. He's going to have a real father. A real home. The words didn't hit like a punch. They landed slower than that. Like something heavy being set down inside me, one piece at a time. Ryan let out a low breath. Good. Because dragging this out with Ethan. I'm not dragging anything, Claire cut in, almost sharply. Then she softened again. I'm finishing it. Properly. Properly. I stared straight ahead at the blurred outline of the highway. $6.8 million. 350 already gone. A child she was building a future around. And me positioned exactly where they needed me to be. Predictable, trusting, temporary. The call stayed open for another minute or so. Small talk, logistics. Nothing that mattered more than what I already had. When it finally disconnected, I didn't move, not right away. I sat there with both hands on the wheel, breathing carefully, like if I didn't control that, everything else would come apart with it. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going home, not yet. My name is Ethan Bennett Cole. Before I tell you what I did next, you need to understand the structure I was standing inside when it all came apart. Because none of what happened makes sense without it. I grew up as the only son of Charles Bennett. If you've ever met a man who built something from nothing, and then spent 40 years protecting it from people who wanted a piece of it, you know the type. My father doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't repeat himself. And he doesn't trust easily. He built Bennett Logistics out of a single freight route on the Gulf Coast and turned it into a network that moves more money in a week than most people see in a lifetime. He did it by assuming that everyone, eventually, will show you exactly who they are if you're patient enough to watch. He used to say there were only 2 rules that mattered: trust slowly, and never let a snake stay warm in your house. I understood the first one early. The second one I thought I understood. I didn't. Claire entered my life when I was 28. We met at a fundraising event, one of those polished, carefully curated nights where everyone is slightly more charming than they really are. She was working the room, technically there as part of a communications firm handling the event, but she moved through it like she belonged to every conversation she stepped into. She was sharp, controlled, effortlessly likable. And more than that, she made people feel seen. That's what got me, not the way she looked. Though she was beautiful in the kind of way that holds up under scrutiny, it was the way she listened, the way she remembered small details, the way she made you feel like you'd been chosen out of the noise. When she turned that attention on me, I mistook it for something rare. Something real. Ryan met her a few months later. We'd been friends since our second year at Northwestern. Same classes, same early internships, same long stretch of years where we were both trying to become the kind of men we thought we were supposed to be. He was the one who stayed when things got quiet, the one who didn't need to fill space with words. When Claire and I got engaged, Ryan was the obvious choice for best man. There wasn't even a conversation about it. My father didn't like her. He didn't say it directly. He never does. But I remember the night I told him I was going to propose. He sat across from me at his desk, hands folded. That stillness he has settling in before he speaks. "She's impressive," he said. "Just make sure you know who she is when there's no audience." I told him he was wrong. I told him Claire was different. I believed that. For 6 years. I believed that. We built a life that, from the outside, made sense. I handled strategy work inside the company, slowly taking on more responsibility as my father stepped back in increments that were calculated, not generous. Claire grew her career in communications, moving from firm work into independent consulting, building a client list that looked better on paper every year. We hosted dinners. We showed up where we were expected to. We became, in every visible way, a stable couple. There were moments, small ones, that didn't quite align. A conversation that stopped when I entered the room. A look that lasted half a second too long between her and Ryan. A detail that didn't add up financially. A purchase or a shift in an account that I didn't examine too closely because it felt easier not to. I filed those moments away, under nothing. That's the part that stays with you after. Not the big betrayal, the quiet decisions you made, over and over, to ignore what didn't fit. The children, that's where things changed. Or, at least, where I thought they did. We tried. Longer than we expected to. There was the first loss. Early enough that people tell you not to get too attached, as if that's something you can control. Then the second. Later. Harder. The kind that leaves a silence in your house that doesn't go away when you turn the lights back on. Claire cried. I held her. I said the things you're supposed to say when you're trying to keep something together that you don't fully understand is already coming apart. Ryan was there for both of them. Sat in waiting rooms, brought food we didn't eat, stayed long enough to make it feel like we weren't alone, then left before it became uncomfortable. I trusted him more after that, trusted both of them more. The third time, we didn't tell anyone until we had to. It ended the same way. After that, we stopped talking about timelines, started using words like options and later, and when things settle. I told myself that what we had survived meant something, that going through that kind of loss together either breaks you or binds you. I thought we had been bound, looking back now. I understand something I didn't then. Endurance and connection can look identical from the outside. You can mistake one for the other for years. And if the other person is good enough at playing their role, you won't know the difference until it's already too late. The trust from my father was scheduled for release the following month. $6.8 million. Structured through a series of internal transfers tied to milestones he had set years ago. Claire knew about it, I had told her early on. Because that's what you do when you think you're building a life with someone. You let them see the whole picture. That night, sitting in traffic, listening to my wife and my best friend map out the end of my marriage like it was a project timeline, I realized something with a clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. None of this had happened suddenly. I had just finally heard it. I didn't go home. I drove downtown. Traffic thinned the closer I got to the financial district, the rain easing just enough to turn the streets into reflections instead of noise. By the time I pulled into the private garage beneath Bennett Logistics, everything in me had settled into something that felt almost precise. Not calm. Controlled. Margot was still at the front desk when I stepped off the elevator. 23 years with my father. She took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. "He's in," she said, already reaching for the phone. "I know," I answered. She nodded once and waved me through. My father was at his desk, reading something under a single pool of light. He looked up when I entered, and for a brief second, his face went completely still. Not surprised. Focused, like he was adjusting a lens. I closed the door behind me and crossed the room without speaking. My phone felt heavier than it should have in my hand. I set it down on his desk between us. "I need you to listen to something," I said. He didn't ask what it was, didn't ask why. He just reached forward, pressed play, and leaned back in his chair. Eyes closing as the recording started. That's how he listens when something matters. Removes everything else. The room stayed quiet except for the sound of my own life collapsing in a calm, conversational tone. Claire's voice. Ryan's voice. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. My father didn't move once. Not when they talked about the money. Not when they talked about me. Not even when Claire said she wanted a real family. The only shift came near the end. A tightening at the corner of his mouth so slight most people wouldn't have seen it. I did, because I'd only seen it twice before. Both times, something significant followed. When the recording ended, he opened his eyes. Silence sat in the room for a few seconds longer than it should have. Then he spoke. "Do you want this handled?" he asked evenly. "Or do you want to handle it yourself?" I didn't hesitate. Both. Something like approval passed through his expression. Not warmth, not comfort, recognition. "Good," he said. He picked up his landline, not his cell. The first call was to Martin Shaw, his attorney, of nearly 2 decades. The kind of lawyer who doesn't waste time explaining what's obvious and doesn't miss what isn't. The second was to Richard Voss. Private investigations. Former federal financial crimes. My father gave them both the same instructions. 3 weeks. Full scope. No gaps. When he hung up, he looked back at me. "Does she know the exact structure of the disbursement?" he asked. "I told her enough," I said. "Not everything." He nodded once. "She knows enough," he replied. "That's all she needed." A brief pause. Then, "You go home," he continued. "You act exactly the same. No confrontation, no deviation, no indication that anything has changed." I held his gaze. "I can do that." He studied me for a second longer. "Yes," he said quietly. "I believe you can." I turned to leave. "Ethan," I stopped at the door. "Trust slowly," he said. "We'll handle the rest." I nodded once and walked out. For the first time since the call, I knew exactly what came next. The first week moved fast. Not on the surface. On the surface, nothing changed. I went to work. I came home. I sat across from Claire at dinner and asked her about her day. I answered her questions. I kept my tone even. My expressions measured. My timing exactly where it had always been. If anything, I was more attentive than usual. That part wasn't for her. It was for the people watching, because people like my father don't just investigate what's happening. They investigate how well you can hold position while it's happening. The real movement happened off stage. Richard Voss came in quiet. He didn't introduce himself like someone who needed to prove anything. Early 50s, compact, direct. The kind of man who looks at systems, not people. We met in a conference room on the 42nd floor 3 days after the call. Martin was already there. My father sat at the head of the table, hands folded. Saying nothing, Richard placed a folder in front of me and opened it without ceremony. "They've been meeting at the Halstead Hotel," he said, "West Loop. Approximately 4 months." He slid the first set of photographs across the table. Exterior shots, entrance timestamps, lobby stills, then 2 images taken through a restaurant window. Claire and Ryan seated across from each other at a corner table. Close enough that the space between them didn't exist. His hand resting over hers, both of them completely at ease, unaware. I looked at the photos. I didn't feel what I expected to feel. No surge, no break, just confirmation. Like closing a file that had already been decided. 14 confirmed meetings, Richard continued, weekly, sometimes twice. He flipped to the next section. The vehicle parked outside her building on Thursdays is registered to a shell company. We traced the lease. A pause. Your wife co-signed it. Ryan Mercer is listed as primary. I exhaled slowly through my nose. Of course. Financials, Martin said, gesturing. Richard turned the page. This part was cleaner, more precise, less emotional, which made it worse. 2 accounts opened in the last 8 months, Richard said. One personal, one through a holding entity. He tapped a column of numbers. Transfers from your joint account began shortly after. Small amounts, structured below reporting thresholds. How much, I asked. $342,000 to date, not an estimate. A number, exact. My grandmother's inheritance had been folded into that account years ago, quietly. Without ceremony, I had told myself it didn't matter whose money it was, that we were building something shared. I nodded once. Destination, my father asked. Offshore routing through a secondary institution in the Caymans, Richard replied. Final account is under layered ownership. But the authorization trail leads back to Mercer. Ryan, of course it did. He's been testing the system, Martin said calmly. Practicing before the larger transfer. $6.8 million. Scheduled to clear in less than 3 weeks. My father looked at me. The disbursement is already in motion internally, he said. We stop it on our side, quietly. Will she know, I asked. No, he said. From her perspective, everything proceeds as expected, until it doesn't. That was the point. You don't disrupt the plan. You let it build. You let them believe they're still ahead. Richard closed the first folder. There's more, he said. He opened a second. This one thinner. Timeline discrepancy, he continued. Your wife's pregnancy. The room didn't shift. No one reacted. But something in me did. Not outwardly, internally. A recalibration. Based on available medical data and observed patterns, Richard said. Conception window overlaps with a period where Mercer was not in the country. Martin leaned forward slightly. Where was he? London, Richard replied. 3-week consulting engagement. Verified. Silence. Richard slid a final sheet across the table. During that same window, your wife had documented contact with another individual. Thomas Hale. 3 confirmed overlaps in hotel records. Same city. No commentary, no interpretation, just data. My father looked at the page, then at me. I didn't say anything. There was a shape to it now. A structure. Not just betrayal. Not just theft. Something more unstable than that. Ryan thought he was building a future. Claire thought she was securing it. Neither of them knew the ground under them might not exist. I leaned back in my chair. Do we confirm it? I asked. Richard shook his head slightly. Not yet, he said. Not legally. This is preliminary. That was enough. For now, the meeting ended without anything unnecessary. No speeches, no reassurances, just a clear understanding of position. Week 2 required a different kind of discipline. I met Claire for lunch on Saturday. She suggested a place in River North, bright, open, full of glass and light. The kind of space designed to make everything look clean. She was already there when I arrived, smiling, relaxed. 7 months pregnant and carrying it easily. There was a softness to her now that hadn't been there before. A kind of visible contentment. I took my seat across from her. You look good, she said. So do you. We ordered. Talked, nothing out of place. At one point, she reached across the table and adjusted my sleeve, something small, automatic. The kind of gesture that comes from habit. Or performance. Have you thought more about the nursery? She asked. I found a place I want you to see. I nodded. Of course. She smiled. Satisfied. I watched her as she spoke. The cadence, the ease, the way she moved through the conversation like there was nothing underneath it. No hesitation. No guilt. That was the part that settled something in me. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was a decision she had already made and committed to. After lunch, we walked through a showroom she liked. She pointed out furniture, colors, layouts, talked about space like it was already real. I listened, responded where expected, stored everything else away. At one point, she said, almost casually, "You've been really steady lately." I looked at her. "I've had practice," I said. She laughed softly. Didn't hear what I meant. That night, I saw Ryan. We met for a drink. His idea. He walked in like he always did, confident, easy. The kind of presence that fills space without effort. "Man," he said, clapping my shoulder as he sat down. "You look good, so do you." We ordered. Talked about work, markets, things that didn't matter. He didn't slip. Not once. Not in tone. Not in timing. If I hadn't heard the call, if I hadn't seen the photographs, I would have left that table thinking everything was exactly where it had always been. That was the part that almost impressed me. The control, the consistency, the belief that they could maintain both realities at the same time. I finished my drink, set the glass down. and realized something with absolute clarity. They weren't smarter than me. They had just been operating on information I didn't have. Now I did. By the third week, everything was in place. The accounts were mapped, the transfers documented, the disbursement halted, the legal framework prepared. All that remained was timing and delivery. I decided how it would happen on a Tuesday morning, not because it felt right, because it felt exact, a contained space. No exits they hadn't already taken, no variables, just the truth, presented in a way that couldn't be redirected. Dinner. At the house. All three of us. I told Claire I wanted to mark the transfer, celebrate properly. She agreed immediately. Of course she did, from her perspective. Everything was about to work. Ryan didn't hesitate either when I invited him. Why would he? He thought he understood the situation. They both did. That was the last advantage they had. And they didn't even know they were about to lose it. The third week wasn't about gathering anything new. It was about control. Control of timing. Control of expression. Control of every reaction that might give them even a fraction of warning. Because once you know exactly what's coming, the only real risk left is showing that you know. And I didn't. Not once. I went home that night after seeing Ryan and cooked dinner. Claire came in just after 7, setting her keys down in the same place she always did. She kissed me on the cheek as she passed, light, automatic. "Smells good," she said. "Thought I'd try something different," I replied. She smiled. Sat down, we ate across from each other like we had for years. Plates, conversation, the quiet rhythm of a life that looked intact from the outside. She told me about a client issue. I nodded in the right places, asked the right follow-ups, watched her. Not in a way that would register. Not in a way that would shift anything, just enough to confirm what I already knew. There were no cracks, no hesitation in her voice, no moment where she almost said too much. If anything, she was more at ease than I'd seen her in months, like something inside her had already moved on. After dinner, she rested her hand over her stomach. A small, instinctive gesture. Protective, possessive. I followed the movement without meaning to. She noticed. "You'll get used to it," she said softly. "It still feels strange sometimes." I held her gaze for a second longer than usual. "Yeah," I said. "I imagine it does." She smiled. Didn't see it. Didn't see any of it. That night, lying beside her, I matched my breathing to hers. Slow. Even. The kind of rhythm that signals sleep. I kept my eyes closed. Counted the seconds between each inhale. Thought about the recording. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Thought about the number again. Thought about how clean it was, how contained, how complete. I didn't let myself think beyond that. Because thinking too far ahead leads to emotion, and emotion leaks. And I couldn't afford that, not yet. The next morning, she asked if I could meet her later in the week. "There's a place I want to show you," she said. "For the nursery, I think you'll like it." "Thursday?" I asked. Perfect. Of course it was. Thursday, the same day Ryan's car sat outside her building. The same day everything overlapped. I nodded. "Sounds good." She leaned over, kissed me again, and left for work. I stood there for a moment after the door closed. Then, I went about my day. Thursday came exactly when it was supposed to. I met her at the showroom she'd picked. High ceilings, clean lines. Everything staged to look like a life that hadn't happened yet but was already waiting. She walked ahead of me, pointing things out. "This one," she said, running her hand along the edge of a crib. "I like how simple it is." I stepped beside her. "It's solid," I said. She smiled. Pleased. We moved through this space like that for almost an hour, discussing finishes, layouts, details that only matter if you believe in the future they're attached to. At one point, she turned to me and studied my face. "Something's different," she said. I met her eyes. "Different how?" She tilted her head slightly. "I don't know," she admitted. "You just seem clearer." I held that for a second, then nodded. "Probably just work," I said. "Things are lining up." That satisfied her. Of course it did. Clarity. To her, meant predictability, and I was giving her exactly what she expected. Later that night, I saw Ryan again. Briefly. We crossed paths at a private event, one of those spaces where conversation floats just above substance, and everyone pretends it's enough. He moved toward me easily. "Thursday's looking good," he said under his breath. "You sure about dinner?" "Yeah," I replied. "Feels like the right time," he grinned. "Big night, then?" I looked at him, held it just long enough to register, something like that. He didn't catch it. Didn't even look for it. That was the thing about both of them. They weren't careless. They were confident. Confident in the version of me they had built in their heads. Predictable, trusting. A man who wouldn't see it coming. A man who would react exactly the way they needed him to. That confidence is what let them relax. And that's what made everything else possible. The final 2 days were quiet. No new information, no surprises. Everything that needed to be done had already been done. Martin confirmed the filings were prepared. Richard confirmed the documentation was complete. My father said very little. Just one sentence, the night before dinner. Precision matters at the end. I understood what he meant, not just what you say, how you say it, when you say it, and when you don't. That night, I stood in the kitchen alone for a few minutes before they arrived. The house was exactly as it always was. Everything in its place. Nothing out of line. You could walk through it and never know what was about to happen inside it. I poured the wine, set the table, checked the envelope one last time, every page in order, every detail where it needed to be. Then, I placed it on the counter and waited. Not anxious, not angry. Just ready. Because by that point, this wasn't about reacting anymore. It was about execution. And for the first time in 3 weeks, everything was exactly where I wanted it to be. Claire arrived first, right on time. She stepped into the house like she always did, familiar. Composed, completely at ease, she set her bag down, kissed me lightly, and glanced toward the table. "This looks nice," she said. "I thought we should mark it properly," I replied. She smiled. Of course she did, from her perspective. Tonight was a celebration. Ryan showed up 10 minutes later. Bottle of wine in hand, easy confidence. The same expression he'd worn 100 times walking into this house. "Big night," he said as he stepped inside. "Something like that," I answered. He laughed, handing me the bottle. I liked the sound of that. We sat down. Dinner moved the way dinners always do when everyone believes they understand the room. Conversation stayed light. Claire asked Ryan about a project he mentioned earlier in the week. He answered smoothly, filling in just enough detail to sound engaged without saying anything that mattered. I asked Claire about a client. She gave me a polished summary. We moved through the first course, then the second. Ryan checked his phone once, briefly. Subtle enough that most people wouldn't notice. I did. Claire didn't look at him when he did it. That restraint deliberate. Practiced. They were careful. That was the part that stood out now. Not the betrayal. The discipline behind it. Dessert came and went. Wine poured. Glasses emptied. Everything right where it should be. Exactly the way they expected it. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, picked up the envelope, came back and placed it in front of Claire. "The transfer cleared this afternoon," I said. Her eyes lit up, not dramatically. Just enough. Relief. Validation. The final piece falling into place. Ryan leaned back slightly, watching. "Congratulations," I added. Claire reached for the envelope immediately. No hesitation, no performance. Just instinct. She opened it quickly, fingers moving faster than usual. Her eyes dropped to the first page. And then everything changed, not all at once, not explosively, gradually. Like color draining out of something. The first page wasn't financial. It was a photograph. Claire and Ryan. Halstead Hotel. Corner table. His hand over hers, date and time stamped. Her eyes flicked to the next page. Another image. Lobby. Different night. Closer, clearer. Ryan leaned forward now, trying to see. "What is?" He stopped. Because he saw it, I sat down, folded my hands on the table, and said nothing. Claire flipped faster now. Images. Dates. Patterns. Then the financial summary. $342,000, line by line, transfer by transfer, account numbers, authorization trails, Ryan's name, her name, documented, undeniable. Her breathing changed, subtle. But there. Ryan reached for the pages. Claire. She didn't let go. Her eyes were already moving to the next section, the transcript. 4 minutes and 12 seconds, formatted clean. Claire, Ryan, Claire, Ryan. Every word attributed. Every line placed exactly where it had been spoken. Her voice, his voice. The line about me, the line about the money, the line about a real family. Sitting there in plain text, no interpretation needed. Ryan stood up, not fully, halfway. Like his body hadn't decided yet whether to leave or fight. "Ethan," he started. I raised a hand slightly. Not aggressively. Just enough. He stopped. Claire reached the final page. Her hands slowed, just for a second. Then she read it. The timeline, London, the dates, the overlap. Thomas Hale. Her face didn't break immediately. It shifted. Calculation first, rapid, precise, then understanding, not of what I had done, of what she had missed. She looked at Ryan. Really looked at him. For the first time since she opened the envelope. And I watched the exact moment something inside her collapsed. Not outwardly. Internally. Ryan took the page from her. Read it. Looked up. Claire, there was something in his voice now. Something that hadn't been there before. Uncertainty. I leaned back slightly. You should read that carefully, I said. My voice was steady, even. Claire didn't respond. She was still looking at Ryan, trying to align what she thought she knew with what was in front of her. It didn't fit. Ryan looked at me. What is this? He asked. Documentation, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. Silence settled over the table. Heavy. Contained. Claire finally spoke, quiet, controlled. You went through my records? No, I said. I had them examined. Ryan exhaled sharply. This is accurate, I cut in. He stopped. Because he knew. Claire's hand moved to her stomach. Instinct, again. But this time, it wasn't soft, it was defensive, grounding. I watched both of them. Took in every detail. Then, I spoke again. The transfer never cleared, I said. Claire's head snapped toward me. What? My father stopped it, I continued. The same day I heard the call, the room shifted. Completely. Ryan's posture changed. Claire's expression hardened. You've had 3 weeks, she said. Yes. For this, she asked. For all of it. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Ethan. Listen, no, I said, not louder. Just final. He stopped again. Because there was nothing to push against, I reached for my glass, took a slow sip. Set it down. The accounts are frozen, I said. The funds are traceable. The documentation is already in the hands of counsel. Claire stared at me. You filed this morning. Ryan let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Except it wasn't. It was disbelief. You're serious? I looked at him, held it. You built a system to take from me, I said. You just didn't build it well enough. Claire's composure was slipping now, not dramatically. Just enough. You don't understand, I do, I said. That stopped her. Because she realized I did, every part of it. Ryan looked between us, then back at the pages. Then, at Claire, and something else shifted, something quieter, more dangerous, doubt. I leaned forward slightly. Whatever you thought you were building, I said, looking at both of them. It doesn't exist. No one spoke, no one moved. The silence stretched, and for the first time since this started, they were the ones trying to understand the situation, not me. 10 minutes, I said. Claire blinked. For what to leave? Ryan let out a short, hollow breath. Claire didn't argue, didn't fight, didn't try to reframe it. She just sat there for a second longer. Then she stood. Slowly. Ryan followed. Neither of them spoke again, not to me, not to each other. They walked to the door in silence. Claire paused once, hand on the frame. She didn't turn around. Then she stepped out. Ryan hesitated a second longer. Like he wanted to say something. Like he was searching for the version of me he thought he knew. It wasn't there. He left. The door closed behind them. And the house went quiet. The house stayed quiet long after they left. Not empty. Just still. The kind of stillness that comes when something has been removed completely. Not just interrupted. I stood there for a few minutes, looking at the table, the plates, the glasses, the envelope, now open, its contents spread across the space where we just had dinner like it was any other night. Then, I started clearing it. One piece at a time, not because it needed to be done, because it gave my hands something to do while everything else settled. The legal process moved faster than most people would expect. That's what happens when you don't have to chase information. When every transfer, every signature, every account is already mapped and documented before the first filing ever goes in. Martin filed the petition the morning of the dinner. Financial misconduct? Misappropriation of marital assets? Fraud tied directly to structured trust distributions. There's a specific kind of language used in those filings. Precise. Clinical. It reduces everything that felt personal into something measurable. Traceable. Recoverable. The offshore accounts were identified within weeks. Frozen shortly after. $342,000, every dollar accounted for. Every dollar pulled back. Ryan tried to distance himself. That lasted less than a month. His name was on the authorization trail. That's the problem with thinking you're careful. You only have to miss one detail. His firm lost 2 major clients before the first hearing. A third followed when a financial publication picked up the case, not naming him directly, but outlining enough specifics that anyone paying attention could connect it. People like his clients pay attention. Claire didn't contest the financial side. She couldn't. There was nothing to argue. Documentation doesn't negotiate. The divorce itself finalized in just under 8 months. Martin called it efficient. I called it inevitable. The settlement included full recovery of the transferred funds, plus damages tied to the fraudulent activity. The trust was restructured immediately after. Moved into a protected account under my name alone. Untouchable under any future marital claim. My father handled that personally. The house stayed mine. It always had been. That was another detail Claire hadn't fully understood, or maybe she had, and just assumed it wouldn't matter. I heard about Ryan a few months later, through someone we both knew. He'd tried to rebuild. Different firm, different city, same patterns. People don't change as easily as they think they do. As for Claire, I don't know the full situation, and I don't need to. I know enough. The timeline, the discrepancies, the look on her face when she read that last page, whatever future she thought she had secured. It wasn't what she believed it was. The child, that's the only part I still think about sometimes. Not often. But enough. Because, whatever else happened, that life didn't choose any of it. Didn't choose the timing. Didn't choose the people. Didn't choose the circumstances it was brought into. I don't carry anger there, just distance. And something closer to acceptance than anything else. A week after everything finalized, I had dinner with my father. Same place we've gone to for years. Same table, same quiet between courses. He poured the wine himself, which he only does when something matters. We didn't talk about Claire, or Ryan, or any of it. Not directly. Halfway through the second glass, he said, "I should have been clearer." I looked at him. "You were," I said. "I just chose not to hear it." He nodded once. That was enough. That's how conversations like that end between men like us. Not resolved. Just understood. I still live in the same house. Same kitchen, same rooms, but it doesn't feel the same. Not because something is missing, because something false is gone. There's a difference. And once you've felt it, you don't confuse the two again. If you've ever had a moment where everything you believed about your life changed in an instant, you already understand why I didn't walk away quietly. This story is created by the Fish Tells Stories team for entertainment purposes only. Do not replicate or apply these actions in real life, under any circumstances.